and welcome back to a new episode of Franklin Covey's twice weekly podcast on leadership with Scott Miller, where each week, twice weekly on Tuesdays and Fridays, I am privileged to sit in this chair and interview some of the most remarkable people in the world. People that have a couple of things in common, and that is to pour their insights, their lessons, their experience into each of you to make you a better leader, to have more effectiveness in your life. Perhaps you're a parent, you're a leader, a spouse, partner, friend, shepherd of some other people in your team. Some weeks we talk with people that are renowned authors, entrepreneurs, artists, creators. Sometimes it's people that you've never heard of before but have discovered something. They've uncovered a principle to make you a better person. In some cases, people that have suffered unspeakable tragedies, that have summoned the courage and the confidence to talk about it and help you metaphorically walk around a similar pothole. Today, I'm honored that Liz Elting is joining us. You know her as the author of the book recently released called Dream Big and Win. Liz is multifaceted: entrepreneur, philanthropist, speaker, coach, author. And today she's going to talk about how you can take some of the principles that she's applied in the business that she has also created to help you both dream big and win. Liz, welcome to On Leadership.
Thank you so much, Scott. I'm so excited to be here.
Liz, great to have you here because I think you are, like many of our guests, very multifaceted, right? You are an entrepreneur, you are a business leader, you're a thought leader, you're an author, a philanthropist, and you continue to learn and teach people through all of your work. For those people who may not have heard of your book, Dream Big and Win, and may not know exactly who you are, I'd love to turn it over to you for a few moments and reorient all of our guests and listeners to what has been your journey. So let's start with, you were born where and what happened, and just take some time and talk about some of the things you've been able to accomplish in your career.
Sure, absolutely. I would love to, and thanks so much for asking, Scott. So I was born in Westchester, New York, and I was fortunate to live there until I was 8. But then, even better, when I was 8, I got to move to Portugal. So I lived there for a year, and it was a very interesting, exciting, dramatic year. Right after we moved there, the Portuguese Communist Revolution broke out. So it was a very difficult year, but interesting. Unfortunately, we needed to move back after only a year because the reason for which we were there couldn't happen. My dad had the right to open Kentucky Fried Chicken. That was why we were there. He got the franchise. But right after moving there, as I said, the revolution broke out. It was dangerous. It was anti-American, anti-capitalism. So after a year, we moved back, and then I moved to Toronto. And that's where I spent the years until I went off to college. And what was interesting about those years, the formative years of my life, is I was able to study 4 languages. And during that time, I absolutely loved languages and learned that was my passion. So I could go on, but do you want me to stop there, or should I go on?
I want you to go on, because that's only half the story, because it's so interesting to make the connection between a somewhat serendipitous early life experience and then how that became the basis of your professional success, your wealth, and your lessons. So make that connection to the nature of your business.
Sure, absolutely. I'd love to. So what happened is I then went off to college, which I did in the United States. I went to Trinity College in Connecticut. And as I said earlier, I had learned I loved languages, but I remember precisely sophomore year when it was time to declare my major, I called up my father and I said, Dad, I need to declare my major. And what I love is languages, but what on earth am I going to do with languages? And he said, Liz, don't worry about it. Pursue your passion, major in languages, and the rest will take care of itself. So that's what I did, majored in languages at Trinity, did my junior year in Spain, and then right after college worked in Venezuela. And then when I was 21, came to New York to really start my career. And then I can go from there, and I'll tell you a little more about what happened. When I was 21, I was so fortunate because I found a translation company. And how perfect is that? I thought it was interesting because people had said to me, oh, you're majoring in languages, so I guess you'll be a teacher or a professor. I thought, no, I love business. but I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this. And then, as I said, I came across a translation company, which at the time was the largest translation company in the world. It had about 90 people. And I was fortunate because when I started, I was able to be in production. And then I moved over to sales. And I absolutely loved it. I loved the culture. I loved the industry. But I thought it could be done better. So I kept that idea in my head and then went back to business school after 3 years. Went back to school, and it ended up being business school at NYU. And then I can go on a little. Do you want me to tell you what happened next?
Well, I do, because I want you to put a cherry in the top and talk about the
Yep,
current nature
yep.
of your business, because I think it'll be inspiring to people to see the
Yes.
trajectory of that.
Yes. So majored in finance and international business at Stern, NYU Stern, thinking I have to be practical. I had the language major, but let's be practical because I want to make sure I have a career after this. And I did that. And then I had a very brief stint in finance right after graduating. I got a job in the proprietary trading division of a French bank, which I thought, okay, this is what I've got to do. Even though I loved the translation industry, how practical is that really? Even though, I had ideas about it. So tried out finance. After only 6 weeks, I realized I made a mistake and I quit and I started my translation company out of an NYU business school dorm room. So that's kind of the most important part. And the reason I didn't enjoy my stint in finance is I realized it wasn't what I was passionate about. I didn't love numbers. It was dry. And I didn't want my boss's job or my boss's boss's job. And also, I didn't like the culture. It was very sexist. This was in the early 90s. And I thought, I had loved the translation industry and I had ideas on how it could be done better. So if not now, when? I was 26. I was used to living like a student, having no money, being broke. And I decided out of that NYU business school dorm room that I was still living in, I would start my company.
In fact, Liz, you went on to found what is now $1 billion translation business with offices, I believe, in 100 countries. Talk about the nature of your company, what you do for a service, because I want to unpack some of the entrepreneurial lessons when our listeners and viewers have the whole picture.
Yes, and what's important there is the reason I started the company, as I said, is I thought it could be done better. But at the time when I started the company, it was 1992, and there were actually 10,000 translation companies already out there. So what I like to say to people is, you do not need to invent something entirely new to be wildly successful. You just need to do it differently and better. And that was my thought. These companies that were out there, they were great, but they were started and run by translators who were busy doing the translations, so they couldn't scale their companies. They were typically between 2 and 5 people. It was a very fragmented industry. So the idea was to build a world-class translation company, the largest in the industry, with offices in every major city around the world and any language-related service. And that was what we ultimately did. After 25 years, we reached the goal. And now there are over 140 offices around the world and over $1 billion in revenue. But I certainly can talk about lessons, but that was the goal. Again, doing it differently and better.
Liz, I want to take a detour for a second because I'm still stuck on the Portuguese Kentucky Fried Chicken story. What did your father do as an entrepreneur when obviously he'd put his life, his soul, his money, his family into this and had to pivot quickly? Was that devastating for him? Did he repurpose that in some other venture in Toronto? What lesson is there to tease out of your dad's devastating failure through no fault of his own? What should we know about that?
No, and I'm glad you asked that because I like to talk about that a little bit, because one thing my dad had learned over the years is he loved that which is international, and he was very entrepreneurial, even though he had worked in corporate America and then ultimately Canada. So the answer is he basically, when we traveled, we went on a trip when I was 4 years old to Jamaica with another family. And he realized then, wow, wouldn't it be great to work in another country? So then after years in marketing and advertising, my dad got this right to open KFC in Portugal. And he took time off from Gray Advertising, where he was working at the time, Gray, New York. And I think he realized, okay, he couldn't do it because you could not open an American business in 1974 and 1975 in Portugal. But he knew he loved entrepreneurship. He knew he loved leadership, and he knew he loved that which is international. So then we went back to New York for a year, and then a year later, he got another international opportunity, which was a little safer for a family, which was in Toronto. And he actually was able to finish his career as president and CEO of Grey Canada. So that was what he learned. He was able to do it in another way, do that which was international and leadership / entrepreneurship. Because in the end, running a company is certainly an entrepreneurial thing to do.
Liz, I hope that our listeners and viewers today take a moment to ponder on the first 5 or 6 minutes of this conversation, because in many ways, everyone has had some kind of experience like yours. Maybe not as grandiose, communism and Portuguese and languages, but what you did was you found yourself put into a situation you didn't ask for. In terms of your exposure to different cultures, you came to love it, you came to embrace it. You made it a passion. You then turned that passion into a dream with a couple of pivots, and then you took that expertise that you developed with your multilingualism, that's a word, and your ability to monetize it through your education, and then you helped to build this massively successful company that's both mission-driven and been extraordinarily financially beneficial. Everyone has some version of that they could piece together. Are there any insights you might tease out to anybody who's listening right now that's trying to figure out what's their version of that, and how do they monetize, build a business, or just ignite a passion they have that may not be their day job that they need to keep for practical reasons, income, insurance, 401k, things like that? What's the practical lesson to tease out of your unique but not so unique journey?
Right. And I think it's a case of what do you love doing, what do you love talking about, and how can you make money doing it? And I know that's been said before, so I don't want to be too cliche, but it is so true. And as you just said, Scott, sometimes for practical reasons, people can't make that into their full-time job, but at least they can do something, perhaps a side hustle, and then grow it into something full-time, or whatever their full-time job is, maybe they can do more of that within the company. If they love dealing with people, maybe they can move into sales, for example. I mean, something as simple as that. But I think it is so, so important to pursue your passion and find a way to make it a big part of your life, and ideally make a living, because that's what it's all about. And it's worth it to take the risk. And believe me, I almost didn't, because, as I mentioned, the second time around, after getting my MBA, I was going to do the practical thing, the finance thing. And then I thought, but I am miserable. What am I doing with my life? And I'm such a believer in recommending that people take that risk, because I think it's a risk not to take it, because then you can really get stuck in a life or in a long career of something you don't want. And in the end, it's really about our passion. And then we are going to be good at it. And then we are going to be happy.
Liz, as I listen to you, I can't help but reflect on my own life. I'm guessing you and I are about the same age. And I wasn't raised in an era or a culture or a family where I was given permission to do what I want. I wasn't given permission I didn't even know it was a choice to pursue my passions. I was raised in a very practical family, practicality and stability over everything. You were raised in more of an entrepreneurial, follow your passion, follow your dream family. It's amazing how the values that our parents hold, deeply inculcated in them from their parents, can have remarkable impact, for good and for bad, on our own transitions. I say that because I think one of your expertises, many of them, is to help people understand you don't always have to invent a brand new product. You don't have to create something that's no one else has done. I mean, you've done a masterful thing. You took a passion you had with a skill you developed and an industry that existed, and you just built it into a phenomenal business. Talk about some of the things you did right that again are replicable for other people in their passion, their industry, and their own skill set.
Yes, absolutely. And that really is the key. So what I noticed at the other company I was working at is they were not providing the best service. That, for example, if a client needed something in a couple of days, they would say it took a week. Like, for example, a client would call up and say, I need an English into Spanish translation. It's 10 pages. How long would it take? And I would have to say it would take 5 to 7 days. But I knew it could be done in a day or two if that's what they absolutely needed. So faster service. They might say they needed a certain kind of deliverable, or they said, what kind of deliverables do you offer? I could basically say only Microsoft Word and WordPerfect, because that was all that we offered back then. But I knew they needed something else. So it was a case of figuring out what they needed and offering them. Or we would make mistakes in their work and we would have to charge them for it. I thought, well, that made no sense. So the point is, spoiling the client with service, urgency, and quality is so key. And that's really a major premise. That was a major principle, what we did, spoiling the client. I later learned you need to spoil the employee as well. Because if you spoil the employee with a great culture and the opportunity to give their ideas and innovate, and then the empower to carry out their innovations, you're going to have a very happy group of employees, and you're going to have a very successful company, and it will be very profitable, and it will keep growing.
Liz, what have you learned from taking
some examples?
Yeah, what have you learned from taking your company from founding to over $1 billion with this massive footprint about sales? I mean, everyone has to sell. Everyone is in sales. Not everybody knows that. Not everybody owns that. Not everybody likes that. But the lifeblood of every company is growth and revenue and selling. What are some principles that you've learned about how to sell effectively, especially a service versus maybe a widget or a product that's physically tangible?
Sure. And I actually love that question, because what I didn't talk about, Scott, is that it's all about selling, sales, sales, sales. And I say funding is vanity, profitable revenue is sanity. So from day one, we did not focus on funding. Instead, we internally funded our company, and it was all about sales. So some of the things I learned, and this was over time from my mistakes, which was, and actually this is a line from one of my mentors who I adore, Jack Daly. He said, don't show up and throw up. Instead, meet with the client, ask questions, listen, and then formulate a good response, a good solution for their needs. I thought, okay, that's super important. So I guess that's one tip. Another is relationships, right? I mean, now it's so much about networking and continually networking and making sure you keep going out there, talking to people, getting to know people, meeting them. And sometimes sales is a long game. You might meet them and it might not be for a year or 2 or 3 later. You get that business, but keep networking. Another thing I learned is it's a volume thing as well. And in my case, I would make 300 phone calls in a day, figure out who at a company would have a need for our service, and then send out 300 letters a day, and be really tough on myself as far as setting the goals and giving myself deadlines to make sure those goals were achieved. So now it wouldn't be letters, it would be LinkedIn messages or emails, but the point is be tough on yourself as far as goals and the actions to make the goals. So I think that's incredibly important. And then very much be in touch with your clients. Talk to them about their needs. Say to them, what else can we do for you? Or what service or product you need that we might not be giving you? Or above all, best would be anticipate their needs before they know they have them. And of course, continual innovation.
Liz, your book is organized into 4 parts. It really is sort of a manifesto on how to build a business. I mean, what I love is your book delivers on the promise of your title, Dream Big and Win. 4 sections: beginning to dream, building the business, refining the purpose, and reinventing the win. I love the story you reminded us about between Borders and Amazon. If you remember that, it was the section around spotting trends. It's kind of a cliche. Everybody talks about, Amazon and Blockbuster. But I love this particular story. I know you wrote this book, a year ago. It launched about 8 months ago. But can you just reshare the basic tenets of what Borders thought they were doing, what Amazon was really doing, and how that interplay ended up in one winning and one failing?
Okay, so in Amazon's case, they started off selling books, as we know, the same way Borders did. But then, of course, Amazon became an online book seller. And what they did is they grabbed the customer. And actually, that's a very important lesson, too, because that's how we grew our company as well. It was about client share rather than market share. Whereas with Borders, they were basically staying with the books, and that's what they were selling. And then, of course, also in Borders' case, it was above all a brick and mortar business, whereas we know that's not the case with Amazon. So basically, Amazon pivoted with the times. They changed with the times, and Borders didn't. And, Blockbuster is, of course, another great example of a company that didn't do that. They didn't change their model. They didn't change their product based on, changing with the times. And pivoting is such an important part of the business, because in the beginning, you have your values and you come up with your values for the company. And sometimes you don't get them on paper from the beginning, but you know what they are. And then over time, you put your core values in writing. But the other thing is you focus on getting that client share. But over time, you will need to change how you sell, what you sell, where you sell it. And certainly that's what Amazon did, whereas Borders didn't do it, and Blockbuster as well, for that matter.
Well, the insight that I took from this chapter, that the section is called Spotting Trends, and you've done, I think, adept job at that, is I didn't realize this. I was a huge fan of Borders. I still love the Barnes & Noble book experience. That, of course, isn't the case for everybody. But Borders had outsourced their online sales to Amazon, and they were focused on the bookstore experience. I'm sure there's lots of reasons why they went down, but they didn't see that trend. You, in your company, you saw the trend of globalization and immediately sort of did the Oklahoma land rush and started to get a big global footprint. The reason I'm mentioning this is, like you, I'm an entrepreneur. I co-own a literary speaking and talent agency. And in order for us to thrive, we have to be looking at, not where is the puck going, but where are we going to take the puck? How are we redefining the industry? I think that's a really valuable lesson. What was the role and the value that globalization had for your expansion versus, just doing it faster and giving the client what they wanted through good service? It wasn't just that. I think it was heavily dependent upon your ability to have a big footprint as well.
Well, yes, absolutely. But in my case, I do talk about globalization as a trend, but the biggest impact that globalization had on me was the reason, above all, to start the company. It was the beginning of globalization. I worked at the other company from 1987 to 1990, and then I saw that it was really the beginning of globalization and business was going global. So I thought, okay, if we start a new company and do it differently and better and focus on, as I said, having offices in every major city around the world and every kind of deliverable and the highest level of service and quality and continual innovation, the sky's the limit. So certainly, in my case, it was the premise, the whole reason for starting the company was the beginning of globalization. But then you are right, Scott. I mean, it was a growing business, and it was very important to have a local presence because of the globalization of business. And that was what we did. That was another differentiator. We made sure we had that presence in over 100 cities. And yes, and now there are offices in over 140 cities. So absolutely, globalization. But another trend, which was important, is technology came in a big way. So we needed to be on the cutting edge of technology. And not only were we selling translation services, we were selling content management solutions and, other tech services. And over time, tech became about 50% of the business. So it's all about changing the product with the times based on the trends.
Liz, what's interesting, I know nothing about the foreign language translation business, although I'm an author, so I understand the need for it. And part of my own business as an author is to make sure my books are translated into foreign languages so I can speak there as well. I'm guessing your journey wasn't all a straight linear trajectory. Was there a big setback, a big mistake, a big lapse in your own judgment that you might share vulnerably with our listeners and viewers as they're on their own incubating, startup, entrepreneurial side hustle, juices creatively flowing mindset, that you might say, hey, watch out for these couple of things because you didn't, and they could help to walk metaphorically around the pothole if you just shared, watch for this, watch for that, ubiquitously across any business or industry?
Sure, absolutely. So one example of that, and it also relates to innovations and starting trends. It relates to the whole situation. But in the early days, I knew nothing about management. I was 26. I had lots of jobs over the years, but I had managed one person my entire life. And so I didn't know quite what I was doing. So I figured I was working hard. Our people would need to work hard because we focused so much on sales, 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 that then when we got business, it was a lot of hours because we didn't have a lot of people. And so I had a lot of people burn out, lost a lot of people, tried to keep them by paying them higher salaries, giving them raises and giving them bonuses, but that wasn't sufficient. So I thought, okay, need to come up with some ideas like people in different time zones, having different shifts, and then of course, finding ways to give people comp time. So that's one lesson. But then another lesson as far as retention is this. I will tell you, I once had an office, and I was sitting right outside my office was an employee that I dealt with every day, many times a day. And we would go back and forth, and I thought we were friends, and I thought everything was great. Well, it turned out one day she came in and said, Liz, I quit. I've got to go. And I realized, wow, I didn't know she wasn't happy. So from that, I learned I needed to have regular one-on-one meetings with our employees. And at least once a week, or if not, once every 2 weeks, that I would need to have these meetings where I talked about, number one, how they were doing personally. And that was really important. How are you doing? No. How are you really doing? No. How are you really doing? And then how are they doing professionally? And asking them those questions. What are their goals at our company? And what can we do to make sure they accomplish those goals? And coming up with a plan for them. And then finally, I would ask them my favorite question which was, what would you do differently if you owned the company? And that was how we got some of our best ideas for innovation. And I can give you examples of the types of things we started, but new product lines, new services. And that's how we ended up being, a global company through our employees' ideas. So that was one lesson, as I said, because that made it so we retained people, and also so the company was very successful. But in the early days, I lost a lot of people. So that's one example. And then I can come up with another.
Well, you came up with lots of them because a lot of these lessons are in the book. The book is Dream Big and Win. I thoroughly enjoyed your book because I'm on a similar journey, right, with my business partner, growing a company with employees and trying to improve my leadership skills and innovate and not take on too many clients and service the ones that I have, by also not raising money to where I give my company away. And so there's so many lessons that you teach in your book. If you are listening or watching today and you're an entrepreneur, you're a solopreneur, you're struggling, you're thinking about how do you launch a side hustle in ethical and complement to your day job, right? I think it's more and more commonplace now for organizations to not just tolerate, but to appreciate the fact that not everybody's vocation is their avocation. And a lot of people can actually be happier in their day jobs when they have something even more fun and exhilarating to go to in the evenings and the weekends. And I certainly recognize that as an entrepreneur myself. Dream Big and Win, translating passion into purpose and creating a billion-dollar business. Liz Elting, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Scott. Great to be here.
And we'll see you back here next week for a new conversation on leadership.